As a little girl, one of my favorite family meals was turkey croquettes. Now it's a meal made with leftover turkey, so it's one of those things we don't get very often, so it's a real treat. Now join me in the kitchen today as I show you how to make this simple meal using leftover turkey. Hey friends, it's Barbara Sue at Kowalski Mountain and welcome back to the homestead. Now today I am going to be making one of my favorite meals, turkey croquettes. Now our family loved this meal, but my mom didn't like it so much because it's a little bit labor intensive. So because of that, it was even more special of a treat because we didn't get it very often. Now, while it's not Thanksgiving now, I have some turkey legs in my freezer that I'm trying to use up. And I'm going to cook them in the Instant Pot to make it super simple. Now, these were some heritage turkeys that we raised. And if you're familiar with raising heritage breeds of birds versus a production breed, they tend to be tough. And these legs would probably be that way. But the Instapot makes this super simple to cook, and it makes it so tender. Now I'm just throwing the turkey legs right into the Instant Pot. Now these have already been skinned, but that would not matter for this purpose. You could leave them skinned. It would make a really nice broth. Now I'm going to put a little bit of water in the bottom of the Instant Pot because the Instant Pot is an electric pressure cooker, and so it's going to use steam pressure to cook this turkey. We're going to put on this lid. Alright, so I'm going to push meat. I'm going to turn off keep warm. I don't need that. Alright, there we go. So in about 2 hours, those turkey legs are going to be fully cooked, and we're going to come back for the next step. Now the turkey is done cooking. And I aimed that steam away from my face. Now this is why I love using the Instant Pot for this. The amazing thing about using the Instant Pot is that, oh, this is hot, the bones just pull right on out. So this just peels right off. Now you do need to be really meticulous to check your meat for little tiny bones because there's going to be a lot of them. But they just pull out so simply. But these turkey legs I have had in the freezer for a while because I was kind of dreading cooking them. The Instant Pot took care of all of my concerns. Super simple. And making the croquettes is a perfect meal for this. So I went through the initial debone of the turkey legs. Now, because this is so meticulous with these little tiny bones, I will go through this one more time. I'm going to let it cool a little bit, and then I'm going to do a final debone to make sure I got everything. Now, in my Instant Pot, I have some broth. Now that is going to be amazing broth. It's probably going to congeal. So that's going to go in the fridge for use this week. I went ahead and did the dishes and things, and I think this is probably cool enough to handle. So let's go ahead and do a final check on the meat, just to make sure I don't have any bones in it. Now, of the downsides of this method, you do need to be super meticulous about those little bones, mostly because there's so many of them. And they're just like little shards of bone. All right, pretty good. Not only found a couple. Although I guarantee my husband will find one, and it's always in his food. So the next step for making our turkey croquettes is we need to grate up the meat. Now I only have a little tiny food processor, so this is going to take me a little bit. Now remember, this is the perfect meal for leftover turkey. I cooked this for this meal, but you can use leftover, and this is just a delicious way to do it. So I'm just going to put some turkey in my little food processor. Now this recipe is actually a family recipe. My mom made us a family cookbook several years ago, and it's part of our family cookbook. I just so appreciate this book because it has all kinds of recipes from my grandmother's and my mom and my sister and my nieces and my daughters. All of us put recipes together, and this is just a real gem of a collection. So the recipe actually calls for 2 cups of cooked chicken or turkey, and I have almost 6. So the best thing about this recipe is this freezes beautifully. Now with just Philip and I being empty nesters, a lot of big meals are too much for the 2 of us, and so I freeze a lot of prepared food that will feed us another night. When I'm busy or don't want to cook, I go to my freezer and I pull out something I've already made, and these turkey croquettes are going to be one of those meals. I don't have very much breadcrumb. Normally I would make this with a seasoned breadcrumb, and I make my own breadcrumbs from my own bread. Oh, I know what I'll do. I know what I'll do. I know how I'm going to do it. I'm going to need my food processor again. So in 2024, I started making all of our bread. What I typically do is I take the ends of the bread, which we don't like. They're just cooked too hard. And I dry them and I make breadcrumbs out of them. Now I had an entire loaf of bread, or almost the entire loaf of bread, that I misshaped, and it had a hole in the center of the bread, and the bread was really not any good for sandwiches, which is what I wanted it for. So I cut up all that bread and I dehydrated it, and I was going to use it to make stuffing, but this is going to make perfect breadcrumbs. So we're going to add this into my little food processor. This little thing, it might be tiny, but it is a workhorse for me. Just going to add these in and grate them up. The nice thing about something like this is breadcrumbs are an expense, and I've just made my own with just some dried bread that I made, and it allows me to make something useful out of something that I thought was a failure. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and season these breadcrumbs. It's probably a little more than a cup. So I'm going to do a little bit more than a tablespoon. Now you can bread this however you want to. I like to use Italian breadcrumbs. You can use Ritz crackers. You could use plain breadcrumbs. It's really up to you and your preference. I'm going to put a little bit more. That looks a little bit more like seasoned breadcrumbs to me. Now, I don't want to contaminate all of my breadcrumbs. I will probably pour some of this into another bowl and then add to. And then anything that's left over, I can save for another day. Now the next step is going to be to season our meat. Now I have about 3 times as much as the recipe, so I'm going to be tripling this. And just to ensure that my seasonings are mixed throughout my meat well, I'm going to mix them into a bowl and then mix them into the meat. So first I'm going to do a little salt. And now I'm going to add some celery salt. I'm going to add some parsley. And I'm going to add some minced onion. Now I'm going to need to ask my mom. It says half a dried minced onion. I don't know half a what? Half a teaspoon? Half a tablespoon? So I'm going to wing that a little bit. Now I'm going to mix all these together. Now I wanted to do this in a clear bowl so that you could see it really well, but I would feel better about mixing this in a larger bowl so I can mix it more efficiently. So let's switch it out. So we're just going to sprinkle this in here, and we're going to mix that throughout. Now it also calls for some lemon juice. And I honestly don't know what that adds to it. This is the joy of an RV kitchen. This is literally my whole countertop. Now the next thing we need to make for the turkey croquettes is the croquette sauce. And in my experience, This makes a lot of sauce, and so while I am tripling the recipe, I'm going to start with a single batch of the croquette sauce because I don't want to have too much. I'm going to start out with some butter that I'm going to melt in the microwave. Now, if you don't like to use the microwave, you can do this on the stove. That's perfectly fine. Now to the melted butter, I'm going to add some flour. And this is my fresh ground flour. This is actually my cream of wheat. It's not quite as fine as flour, but it's what I had on hand. I'm going to whisk that in. And now I'm going to add some milk. So I'm going to whisk that in. And this is going to go back into the microwave, and we're going to cook it in minute intervals until we have a thick sauce. So now I'm going to stir this a little bit. And I'm going to cook it another minute. Now I've been cooking it for about 3 minutes. So at this point in my cooking process, I'm checking it every 30 seconds to whisk it up. And we're definitely getting there. This is much thicker at this point, and I'm sorry I lost one of my lights. It went out. I'll fix it. Let's do 30 more seconds. All right, so let's do it. Now that was about 4 minutes of microwaving, and I've got a really nice thick sauce here. That looks perfect. So now we're going to dump our croquette sauce into our turkey. And we're going to stir it all up. So the croquette sauce is kind of the glue that's going to hold the croquettes together. And I'm glad that I did not multiply that recipe because I like the thickness of this. Now this has to chill, and so for the sake of my RV refrigerator, I am putting this back into the small bowl so that I can chill it. Now to speed up the chilling process, I actually put my mixture into the freezer for about an hour, and I stirred it a couple times while it was in there to kind of mix up the meat so it just wouldn't chill from the outside, but it would be chilled through. Next thing we need to prepare is the egg dip. Now since I'm doing so much, I am going to do 2 eggs and 2 tablespoons of water. And we're just going to mix that up really good so that we can roll the croquettes in egg and then batter them. Now I've also prepared a tray that I will put my prepared croquettes on, and this will be the group that's going to go into the freezer. Now when I'm battering anything, I like to create a workflow. So I have my meat mixture, I have my egg, and I have my crumb. So now I'm going to take a little bit of the mixture, and you can decide how big you want to make them. Now I'm not going to make them huge, and I'm going to make a little patty. Now I'm going to take my little patty and put it into my egg, and then into my breadcrumbs. And then the finished croquette goes onto the tray. And I just do that until I use up all of the croquette mixture. Now you want to try to make them about the same size, and that's just so that they'll cook evenly while you cook them. So I've got like a small handful. It kind of fills the palm of my hand, and that's about the correct portion for meat. I'm patting that out into a little patty, and then I'm going to put it in the egg mixture, and then into the crumb mixture. I want to make sure it's well crumbed, and then it goes onto my tray. Now when you're making your patties, you kind of want to make them the same thickness all the way around. You don't want them to be really thin on the edges and thick in the middle, because you want them to cook really nice and evenly. Now, turkey croquettes are a wonderful budget-friendly meal. These can be made from the leftovers of the turkey that maybe nobody likes. Maybe your family only likes the white meat, or maybe you only like the dark. You can use this to make up the extra and kind of sneak it into a meal. My mom gives some helpful hints in her recipe. She says that white meat absorbs more of the croquette sauce than dark meat. And I'm only using dark meat in my croquettes. But kind of keep that in mind if you're making it, that the white meat will absorb more of the croquettes. And that's because the white meat is a little bit drier of a meat. Now, if you remember, I reserved some of my bread mix because I didn't want to contaminate anything that I might not use. So this will be a good time I can add some more. Now I want to go ahead and wash my hands before I do that, because I don't want to contaminate the bowl as well. Now here at Kowalski Mountain, we have a working kitchen. I used to try to make my kitchen all perfect for recording videos, but this is a working homestead, and I always have a lot of projects going on. So I've got some hard-boiled eggs over here. I've got my milk canister ready for milking. I've got dishes everywhere. This is a working kitchen, and it's not perfect, but it's providing nutrients for our family. And I get a lot done in this little RV kitchen, I have to tell you. Now remember, I started with 4 turkey legs, and honestly, I did not know how I was going to cook those turkey legs to make them a good meal. For one, they're a heritage turkey. They're tough. We'd also skinned them, so I kind of felt like they were going to be dry when I cooked them, and I really didn't know what I was going to do. But with those 4 turkey legs, Philip and I will get 3 meals out of this because we'll eat 2 each. The ones that we're going to have for dinner tonight, those are going to go in the refrigerator for the rest of the day to chill. And that way they're ready for cooking up. Now the rest of them are going to go in this tray directly into the freezer so that they can freeze solid. And then I can use them for a future meal. Now next up is cooking them, and with that you have a couple of options. You can bake them or you can fry them. I told you you're bound to find anything in my homestead kitchen. My husband just brought in this frame of honey from the bees. Now we are going to return it to a different hive, but I just got a giggle that he just put this on my counter in my kitchen. Now turkey croquettes are such a treat to me that I like to make them fried versus baked. Now you can certainly bake them and they are good that way, but I like them fried, and so I don't do it very often, so it's a treat that I really enjoy. Now if you want to bake them, you can bake them at 450 degrees for about 15 minutes until they're golden brown, and they will be delicious. Now, one of the things that I noticed in my mom's notes was she typically cooks them and freezes them after she's cooked, whereas I froze them first and I'm going to cook them later. So you can do whichever one you want. I just chose to do it uncooked, but if you bake them first, you can warm them up and have an instant meal. Now tonight I am serving this with some potatoes. I guess that would be fried potatoes. I cooked those in tallow, which I made from my very own tallow that I rendered from our deer. So if you want to learn more about rendering tallow, you can learn about that right up here. Now this is just a regular cooking oil. When I'm frying, I don't like to use expensive olive oil, so that's just a cheap oil. Now to make me feel better about my fried meal, I'm serving it with a salad so that I don't have to feel guilty. Now once the oil comes to temperature, we're going to fry these up. Now one thing to note, you definitely want to chill the croquettes before frying so that the breading will stick to your croquettes. So you don't want to skip that second chill. So we chilled the mixture in the beginning before we made the patties, and then we also chill it after we make the patties, after they're breaded, to allow the breading to stick. So I'm starting to hear that oil, so we're going to go ahead and put these in. Now I try to flip these only one time so that we don't risk that they break up. Just keep in mind that the turkey is already fully cooked. All we're doing really here is heating it through. Now I've already prepared a plate with the paper towel on it to allow the croquettes to drain off a little bit before we eat them. And these are golden brown, so we're going to take them out. And there we have it. Now these are cooked through and they look gorgeous. Perfect. Just like my mama used to make. Well, friends, I hope you've enjoyed cooking with me and making one of my favorite childhood meals. Now, this recipe is in the Kowalski Mountain Subscribers Library. So if you'd like a printable copy of the recipe, please click the link and join the Kowalski Mountain family. And you'll find that recipe in the Kowalski Mountain Subscribers Library as a free download, along with all of my other favorite recipes. Well, friends, thanks so much for watching. If you haven't hit that subscribe button yet, hit that button. We'd love you to be a part of the Kowalski Mountain family. Thanks so much. We'll see you next time.